Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Van, your friendly neighborhood English teacher. I am super excited to be with you guys today, and I think we have a doozy of a story. So for those of you who may not realize it or maybe didn't read the story yet, this story has some mature themes. Now, we won't be talking about anything inappropriate at all in the class, but the class is geared to 7th to 12th graders. So if you are much younger, this just a heads up, there's mature themes in this story. Okay, so I want to pull the chat back where I can see it. All right, so everyone, I've seen some of the comments and what you think so far, but now is your chance. How did you feel? Did this story just make your jaw drop? Like when you got to the end, were you like, like, are you even kidding me right now? Right? I cannot wait to hear what you say about this. If you didn't understand the story, don't worry about it, because that's what we're here for today. And I think that once we go through it, you're going to be like, whoa, my mind is blown. So here we go. All right. So scale 1 to 5, scale 1 to 5. And you know the drill by now, right? We're 5 days in. So a 1 means I hated this story, and if you make me read it again, I'm going to stick a hot poker in my eye. And a 5 is, man, Mrs. Van, I just want to make everybody I know read this story because it is the best. It is the best. So anywhere between a 1 to a 5. Very, very curious. Very, very curious. Ooh, lots of high numbers for this story. Some people voting more than once. That's okay. It's not a real election. Nice. So suspenseful. Yeah, isn't it amazing? So some of you didn't like it that much, and I'm curious about whether you like it more after we talk about it. So just like the last couple days, we're going to start out with a little bit of a thank you to the stars. So first of all, this one is not from the class. My husband happened to see this, and this is probably a good time to explain the names. So my first name is Lisa, and my last name is Van Gammert. It's 2 separate words. And so my students always call me Mrs. Van because Van Gammert, so long, right? But it's what I did for love. And so I have this very long name, so I go by Mrs. Van. So Mr. Van found this tweet yesterday where somebody was making an allusion to the gift of the Magi with regard to the coronavirus. I thought it was hysterical, right? I sold my Nintendo Switch so I could buy my girlfriend toilet paper, but she sold her toilet so she could buy me a game. Like I when he showed me that, I was just like, this is awesome, right? So, and if any of you had seen that, you would have been like, gift of the Magi, right? You know what? That's what makes reading so fun, is that you see stuff and it means something to you. Like you see it and you're like, I know what that is. I know what that is. And you get in like on the inside joke of the world. Like, it's amazing. Okay, so that was from outside the class. Here we go. Heidi Davis, Rockstar Sometimes Barefoot. Thank you, Heidi. I am barefoot again today, so thank you for the support in that. Carly, I love you. That is so sweet. Now, Carly, that's kind of a dangerous thing to say because you know that your mom and I know each other. And so I could end up showing up at your house and trying to teach you something. So be careful. All right. Question for Mrs. Morgan's class. So Mrs. Morgan's class, lots of you participating in the class. And I am curious about when this is all over and we no longer have to do social distancing, and your class goes back to class, I was wondering if maybe I could come visit your class in real life. I would really love to meet some of you in real life. So if you, if that would be okay with you, let me know. I would just love to see that. Okay, Peyton, can you shout out my teacher, Miss Badero? She's my teacher that watches this too. And first of all, definitely I will give a shout out to Ms. Badero, but mostly I would like to also give a shout out to Peyton for caring enough about your teacher to want her to have a shout out. And I want to thank Ms. Badero for being the kind of teacher that kids care enough about to want them to get a shout out. So thank you for being a teacher, and thank you for being a great teacher, and shout out to you. next, Jody, I'm worried about you. That he has to kill him. What kind of normal person wouldn't kill him? That made me nervous. Okay, Aaron Kelly. 50 points to Gryffindor for this one. Because do you remember the question that I asked? Like, who do you think it is that in the Cask of Amontillado, who do you think he's telling the story to? And how most analysts think it's like a priest, like making a deathbed confession. And Aaron throws down this idea, and it is so awesome, which is maybe he's writing in his journal, like that his journal would be something that would know him so well. Okay, I'm going to interrupt it so I don't miss this chat that's going by. A shout out to Mrs. Sanford, and absolutely shout out to Miss Sanford, all the teachers who are here. Special shout out to you. You're so welcome, and I'm so excited that you're here. So Aaron says that he could have given biased views to his journal and not worried that there were going to be consequences to that. So Aaron, nice thinking. Really liked it. Very nice. All right, Kurt. This was an example from when we were working with the participial phrases. And I thought this one was cool because of two things. I want to give him a little bonus here because he added in another participial phrase in the second part of the sentence. So attempting to jump over the creek for the 5th time was the part that I gave you guys. And then you were supposed to add on the sentence after. And look at what he does. The young boy panted loudly, whispering about the trees he loved so. So he added another participial phrase. And I was just like, mic drop. I mean, awesome. Doesn't get better. So nice. Okay. Let's see. Nerdy Fangirl asked me, do I know Mrs. Bennett? If you're talking about Mrs. Bennett at Lamar High School, then 100% yes. All right. And then quote of the day from Amelia Boo, my new name, Mrs. Vanstar. Totally love it. And I'm thinking that I might change my Twitter handle. Like, I absolutely love that. So thank you for that. Okay, so ready to dive into the story? I just am so excited. Last night, I was like, I can't wait till tomorrow. Okay, so we're going to visit the plot just in case some of you didn't read it or you read it and you're like, I still don't really know what happened, right? Okay, it's because maybe you were trying to read the story while simultaneously watching Netflix. All right, could happen. Okay, backstory. Woman who had been a foundling, which a foundling is a baby that's discovered and nobody knows where it comes from, right? So we know where babies come from, but we don't know where this baby came from. That the woman had been a foundling, grows up, and she marries a neighbor who falls madly in love with her, right? Okay, so, and then the inciting incident, now remember that we can all have a different view on what these are. It's not written in stone. It's not like the author has a code and they say, oh, by the way, my inciting incident was this. In fact, today I wrote a review on Goodreads about a novel I just finished that was terrible. And one of my biggest complaints about the novel was there was no climax. Like, I was waiting for the moment of greatest emotional intensity and it never happened. So I think the inciting incident is this, which is they have a baby. And then the rising action, her mother notices something off about the baby. The husband and the visitors are acting strangely, like all this tension is building. And then the climax, Desiree realizes her baby is not completely white. And she's completely white. And she's wondering what happens, right? She realizes this. And then we have this falling action where the husband tells her to leave and she leaves. And then apparently she dies because that's all we hear. Like, it says she's never heard from again. And then, Kurt, I see your question. Could the inciting incident be their marriage too? Absolutely. However, if they'd been married and never had children, then it wouldn't, like, nothing would have happened, right? Because some people get married and they never have children, either because they choose not to or they can't. Then there would have been no story, right? They would just live and they would never have known. So I see your point, and I think it's a possible one. Okay, so then after her husband tells her to go and dies, and then the resolution, the husband is like burning, the dad's like burning all this stuff that belongs to her and learns the shocking truth. And so Oh, it's so fun. Okay, so thoughts? Anybody have any different things? Oh man, I'm seeing some of these comments and I'm like, oh, just wait. There's so much in this story. Oh, the role of visitors. Thank you for that question, Kanari. I hope I'm saying your name right. Thank you for that question. I never really understood the visitors. Okay, so this story is set like over 100 years ago, like 150 years ago, right? And at that time, especially in the South, but even in the North, it was very much like it was in Europe, where people would go visiting, right? Where you would go visit people because they didn't have phones. Like you couldn't just call on the phone. You couldn't text. If you wanted to see somebody, there was no social distancing. And so they would go over. And so it was more showing us like the society in which they lived in. Like these people kept coming over, and it's a hint, right, that they all know something's going on. Something's going on. Okay. I'm seeing that some of you are making a wrong inference about what the husband thinks when he figures out that the baby isn't white. So I'm glad that we're going to do that. Huge plot twist. Yes. All right. So here's something interesting. And I know that at least one of you caught this because you wrote about it. And by the way, shout out to Mrs. Van, because I reviewed all of the writing. So I reviewed writing for hours. So I get an A. All right. So Kate Chopin, who wrote this story, so her name is pronounced Chopin, just like the composer. So Kate Chopin was absolutely in love with the writing of Guy de Maupassant, the guy who wrote The Necklace. And she said this about him: I like to cherish the delusion that he has spoken to no one else so directly, so intimately as he does to me. She really felt like she was kind of channeling his writing, that she was the greatest imitator of his writing. And so the structure of this story is very much like The Necklace. And at least one of you noticed that there was like this big ending. And that's exactly how The Necklace ends. And it's how this ends too. Okay, so what we've got here, though, is not just this reverse ending, which is exactly what we see in The Necklace, where there's a strong, like, reversal of fortune or a reversal of what we expected. But in addition to that, Chopin adds this layer. Jackson Williams, you're totally not right about that. She adds this layer that there is this social issue, right? Where there's this whole overarching theme of racism. So in The Necklace, we have this like wealth and poverty, and we have a little bit of that in Kate Chopin's story as well, just because of the structure, the social and economic structure of the time. But really what we've got is this added very strong theme of the slavery going on, the racism going on, and Chopin is trying to show the hypocrisy that's in that and the ridiculousness of being racist. Like, I think one of the biggest takeaways that you could get from this story is how ridiculous it is to be racist. Like and what's interesting is that we think that people are just now coming to that idea, but she wrote this story over 100 years ago. And so a lot of times one of the things that benefits you in reading and reading what's being written right now is that writers are often making commentary and forcing us to look at our own culture and society and beliefs and confront them in a way that, like, as a society, we won't do for a long time. All right, so this is a southern plantation. This isn't the exact house, Valmondé, but it's fictional, so I can't go find a picture of it. But this is kind of what we're looking at, right? This is what Valmondé would have looked like, essentially. And you can see these pillars, and that means something to us a little bit later. So some of you may have noticed that this story did not take place in modern day Los Angeles, right? No siree, Bob. We are in pre-Civil War Louisiana. And that makes for some interesting happenings. And it also makes for something that other people picked up on earlier in the chat that I noticed before we even started the live stream, which is, what is with all these big words? So when we read stories that are set at different places, at different times, we're going to encounter some unfamiliar words. I mean, that's just how it goes. There are words that we're using right now. Like, think about it. Even the word social distancing, if you had said that a month ago, nobody would even known what you're talking about. And so language is very fluid. Language is always changing. Language is malleable. And when you read, and you read things from different times and places, you learn a lot more language because of that. So part of the joy of reading is that it immerses us in that other world. And every culture, like part of what it means to be a culture is to have a language. And so if you really want to immerse yourself in a culture, you have to know the language, right? You can't be fully in a culture if you don't know the language that that culture speaks. And so if you want to fully immerse yourself in a story, you need to get into the culture of the story, and to get into the culture of the story, you've got to get into the language of the story. And I mean, this is especially true when you're reading a book that has a world building, right? So you guys are used to this with stuff like Hunger Games and Harry Potter, like all of these things, the Divergent series, all of those kinds of stories with world building. You're used to it. Like, you have to learn all these new words that don't mean anything outside of the stories. And I feel like a lot of times younger readers are willing to accept that in the books that they're reading that are fantasy fiction or dystopic fantasy, but less willing to do that when encountering a story that they've been invited to read. And so I think one of the things that can set you apart as a strong reader is to recognize that if you really want to get into the culture of the story, you're going to have to understand the language and the culture of that story if you really want to understand the story. And when you do that, you'll like it better. So don't freak out. Don't panic. Here's the secret. Look it up, right? I mean, it's absolutely crazy. It is not rocket science. You used to be able to use a dictionary. We have these things called dictionaries. Wait, let me go back one thing. Yeah, no, there we go. Okay, I want to tell you a little story. So, I, as a teacher, like a real live teacher, I started out teaching third grade. So I taught in elementary school, and then I moved to the high school. And in high school, I teach 9th through 12th grades. Different grades, different content areas. So I teach language arts and social studies. Okay, so a number of years ago, and I tried to look up in my own diary when this was, and I think it was 2007, so 13 years ago. In my state, which is Texas, we have a big test. Now it's called the STAR test, but it used to be called the TAX test. And in the English class on the TAX test, you have a multiple choice part, a short answer part, and an essay. And in order to pass the test, you have to pass the essay. Well, in 2007, there was a huge failure rate on the 10th grade TAX test for English. And almost everybody who failed the test failed because they failed the essay. Remember, you can't pass the test unless you pass the essay part. And the reason they failed the essay was because there was a word in the essay prompt that they didn't know. And so they responded to the prompt completely wrong. And you know what's ironic about this? They all had a dictionary on their desks. So, I mean, it's absolutely crazy, but if we don't look stuff up, it can really hurt us. So now you can use a real life dictionary. You can use the internet. You can use She Who Must Not Be Named. I don't want to wake her up on my desk here, but you know who I'm talking about. You can just ask, what does such and such mean? I'll tell you the truth. The thing that we use it most for is to say, play Baby Beluga, because we have a little baby granddaughter and she loves that song. So that's what I mostly use it for. But she would also give me definitions, right? So when in doubt, dictionary out, right? If you don't know what the word is, look it up. So I want to go over a few of the words that I think are some maybe crazy words in this story and make sure that we're all on the same page. You know what? Somebody wants to know what the word was on that test in the story. I don't remember. I need to ask some of my teacher friends if any of them can remember. I never thought I would forget. We didn't actually get to see the test. So it was like later when the data came back from the state. All right. So message of the day, use a dictionary. All right.
What was
so
the word?
I don't remember.
Okay. They want to us.
Yeah, I know. I just said that. My husband just asked me, what was the word? I'm like, I don't know. I don't remember. It wasn't that hard of a word, really. Okay, so here are 6 words I think you might not be familiar with, and I want to define them for you so that we're all on the same page. So, beneficent. Okay, you guys are used to this because think of Maleficent, right? And she's bad. Bena means good, like benefit, beneficial. Whenever you see that phrase bena or ben, it means good. And so this is beneficent is something that's like charitable and generous. Mal means bad. So little Snow White illusion there. All right. Then this one, the next one, I'm going to go down in the column. And the next one down, corbeille. It's pronounced corbeille. It's a French word. If you just look it up, this is one that can confuse you. This is a sophisticated technique. So if you just look up corbeille, what does it mean? It'll say it's like a basket with fruit and flowers in it, or sometimes a trash can that you throw paper in. However, that's not the context of corbeille in this story. It's important in this story that you understand that corbeille, in this sense, is related to the marriage. And it's important because it's going to come up in the story twice. I don't know if you noticed that this word was used twice. In the beginning, when he says he wants to marry her, and he says he has to order the corbeille from France, and then they can get married. And then at the very, very end, when he's burning all her stuff, and he says, and the story tells us, the narrator tells us that there was all this great stuff in there because the corbeille was good, right? Okay, so what is a corbeille in the sense of marriage? All right, so a marriage corbeille is, it can be a basket, but it can also be like a stone container, like made of marble or something. And in it would be all of the things that a married woman would use to kind of transform her from a girl to a woman. So it might have like beautiful cashmere scarves or shawls. It could have special things for her hair. It could have fancier ornaments and jewelry. So it's something that would let a wealthy man prove how wealthy he was by how much he dolled up his wife. Right? And all that goes in the corbeille. And so a corbeille is almost like a woman might prepare for herself what's called a hope chest, where you put in like blankets and things that you might need to set up a household. A corbeille is what would be used by a wealthy man to set his wife up so that he could show her off appropriately and everybody would know he was rich. Okay, so that's a corbeille. And it could be expensive. It could be a lot. So they used to pay a dowry, like they would pay a dowry. It could be worth as much as 10% of the dowry. So it could be really a lot. And it could sometimes be a little desk. It could sometimes be a trunk. Okay. So in this society, a corbeille would be very important. We don't even do it now, but although sometimes people will give a gift at the wedding, it's not usually given as a gift like, here, wear this so everybody knows how rich I am. If somebody tries to do that, then it's a problem. I see somebody said, move your video. I'm not going to, just because I know that that's all there is. Like, I'm not really cutting anything off. It's just somber. I just have a different spelling. I tried to be careful in this one, but I think this slide and the next one are the only ones where I might cut the picture off. So I'm sorry about that. Okay, so next word is parish. A parish is like a county. So you would have, instead of a county, so you would have a city, and then that city would be located within a parish. Imperious is a Harry Potter curse. No, just kidding. Imperious means like arrogant and domineering. So like you act like you've got something more important going on. You've probably seen people like walking through the hall at school even, or in a store, acting like they've got somewhere really important to go and everybody else should just move aside for them. That's what imperious means. Everything covered said parish is something else. Parish also has a religious significance, like a Catholic parish, but in the sense in this story, it's talking about an actual civic locality. All right, and then we have quadroon. So quadroon is a word, it is an archaic word, meaning an old word that we wouldn't use anymore. And it means someone who is 1/4, like quadrant or quad, 1/4 black. So 1/4 African in this case, African American, right? So that would be what they refer to as quadroon. Do not use this word. Like, this isn't a word that you should learn and then go use. It's offensive. So don't say that. And then, so usually a quadroon would have been someone who was the child of someone who was white and someone who was half black. So, and then together that would be a quarter black. Okay. So then, somber is dull, somewhat dark, gloomy. And I just put both spellings here, although you can't see the final R on the bottom one. But I just wanted you to see that somber spelled R-E is the exact same as somber spelled E-R. And then I wanted to show you this picture. I went and found this picture of a corbeille. So this is, you see that thing that's on the table in this picture, that big like urn almost, it looks like an urn. That's the corbeille. And this is somebody in there like looking at the corbeille. So that's what it looked like. And it could be big, right? Okay. So then the other 6 words I think you might benefit from knowing. So a pyre. We sometimes will say a funeral pyre because in some cultures they burn the bodies of the dead on a pyre. You see that in a lot of old stories too. In this case, a pyre is just a heap of flaming objects, like everything is being put on fire. A layette is a layette is a set of clothing and like blankets, like bedding for a newborn baby. A spousal is like a betrothal. It's stronger than an engagement. If you break, like even in the Bible, it refers to Joseph traveled with Mary, his espoused wife. It is much stronger than just being engaged. If you break this, it's like a breach of contract. It's a huge big deal. It's like getting divorced. So an espousal is an important part of the marriage process from the sense of legality and contract. All right, a cowl. So you may have seen monks with those like brown robes and they have that hood. That's a cowl. So a cowl is the hood itself, or the whole robe can sometimes be referred to as a cowl, but also, and if it weren't so warm, I would have worn one. There is a cowl neckline that is common in sweaters for women where the like collar of the sweater drapes way down. That's also called a cowl. And then a pall. So what's interesting is pall is a noun that originally was meant for the like velvet covering cloth over a casket. So that would be the pall, and you will like lay the pall over the casket to cover it, to drape it. And then pall merged into being a sense of a gloomy effect or a gloomy atmosphere. And you'll hear the phrase cast a pall in the same way that you would throw a velvet cloth over a casket. You can cast a pall over an environment, right? You walk into the room and say, oh, by the way, this horrible thing happened, and you cast a pall. All right. And then the last word that I've cut off half the letter there is bayou. Bayou is a body of water. It is sluggish. It is like a sluggish stream. It goes through marshes or plantations. So word of the day, bayou. I went and found a picture of a bayou. This is what looks like in the South. So they often have, because the water is so slowly moving, it's got a lot like on top, floating on top of the water. A lot of times there's Spanish moss hanging down. Now my favorite bayou, my favorite bayou of all time, the Blue Bayou restaurant in the middle of the Pirates of Caribbean ride at Disneyland. My mom took me here on my 10th birthday, and it is still my best birthday ever. So the Blue Bayou restaurant. And if you go in there, you'll see they have it set up kind of like that. Like there's the water going around, and there's also like all this drippy stuff. All right. So those are our words. Now, foreshadowing alert. So I saw someone put in the thing that they were confused about something. If you're confused, tell me specifically what confused you so that then I know how to respond. Because remember, I'm ahead of you by like 7 seconds. This is an alternate universe where I am. Okay. Then foreshadowing alert. There is so much foreshadowing in this story, and it starts right at the beginning. Okay. Monsieur, in riding through the gateway of Valmondé, which is their house, had found her lying asleep in the shadow of the stone pillar. So why this is interesting is that we have this backstory we're being given here, but we don't know that we need this backstory until later. We've got this foundling child, and she's discovered in the shadow. So like this shadow is being cast over her from the very beginning, and that is super important to notice. In time, Madame Valmondé, how do I put those two words together? Abandoned every speculation. Like they stopped worrying about it. There were rumors like, oh, they've been left by people who were on their way to Texas, which was common, right? Texas was being heavily settled at this time. Lots of people moving there to get land. And so that was one idea. Lots of people came through Louisiana on their way to Texas and the Promised Land. But she just stopped worrying about it. She just said, they name her Desiree, meaning like desired, like we wanted this child, and sent to her by a beneficent, remember that word now, right? Like good God, like a loving God, to be the child of her affection, seeing that she was without child of the flesh. So she'd never been able to have her own children, and she feels like, oh, God sent me this beautiful child to love. But there is this irony here, because she's being named Desiree, meaning like desired or wanted, but then later on she's not going to be. It's like so weird. Okay. For the child grew to be beautiful and gentle, affectionate and sincere, the idol of Valmondé. What I think is important about this line is it's saying to us, friends, she's got a lot going for her. Like this isn't just some pretty girl. It's not just that she's pretty. She's pretty inside too, right? She's pretty inside too. So I see some of your questions, and they're going to become clear later on. So if I see you ask a question that I know I'm going to talk about later, I'm not going to respond to it when I see it. And also remember, I can't always see all of the questions because I can't read and talk at the same time. All right. Now, so more foreshadowing. Remember the whole story. Foreshadowing. The two main literary devices in this story: foreshadowing and irony. Foreshadowing and irony. Foreshadowing and irony. It's like a piano with only two notes. Okay. Monsieur Valmondé grew practical. So this is when Armand has fallen in love with her. Armand has fallen in love with her and wants to marry her. So Armand's dad is like, dude, we need to find out where she came from. Like, we need to make sure that we know about this. But Armand looked into her eyes and did not care, right? Like, he's so in love. What does it matter about a name? I'll give you my name. And I have such a wonderful name. Like, it's a hint of his pridefulness. And it's also a hint that looking into her background was something that maybe they thought they should have done. Okay. Then.
Audio just changed.
Did it?
Got super soft.
My husband just told me that the audio got super soft, but I didn't do anything different. So, but I will take a second to go back and check if something got switched on here. Nope, everything's still the same.
So it was softer and then slower for some reason.
Huh.
So,
Maybe a lag in the feed.
well, no, you got your pitch went down. So.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Yeah, your pitch is down.
Is it back?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
I see thing in the thing, the volume got low. I don't know. Yeah, it did. I'm seeing it in the chat now. I don't know. Is it, what I have is this delay, so I can't tell if it gets better.
I'll tell you if it does.
I've got the sound up like as loud as I got. Ooh, I can barely hear. Hold on, let me try to figure that out for a second, guys. Okay.
Redo the road, maybe. I don't know if you do that midstream though.
I can raise it. I can, yeah, here. Hold on. I'm gonna take my audio completely off for a second so I can re-put it on and see if that helps. Hold on just a second. Okay. Is the sound back? We won't know for 7 seconds.
Well, you won't know for 7 seconds. That'll
Yeah.
be right away.
Yeah. Okay. Let me wait to see. There should be just this little delay. All right.
Yes.
Is it back?
It's
Can you hear me?
low. The audio's still low.
Still low.
I mean, you may just have to continue, but you sound like a guy.
I sound like a guy?
It's weird. It's lower pitch for some reason.
I don't know what to do. Okay. That's so weird that I sound like a guy.
You may just have to keep going with it.
Okay, you know what I could do? Let me try switching to... I'm really sorry about this, you guys. Let me see if I could pull the sound.
Pick up because it's not the computer's not set to do that, I think.
Okay. Well, then we're just going to be low. That's weird, right? Okay, well...
Could you start and stop stream or not? Do that differently.
You know what else? If you could, okay. No, I don't want to start and stop the stream.
Yeah.
But if you could go in there and grab me a little Ziploc bag. No, up above in that. Yes. A Ziploc bag that has my Rode mic. Another one. I'll try it. Okay. So I'm sorry about the sound. We'll try to fix it quickly. Try to switch to another mic to see if that's the problem. Except that I doubt that it is because I switched the mic and it still didn't do it.
No,
So
try
that's
that.
weird.
Replug this back in.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry for these technical difficulties. If we have to, we'll continue this way, but I do want to try to fix it. So let me add my Rode back in again. Audio output capture. Oh wait, should it be output capture or input capture?
Input capture.
Okay, maybe that's my problem.
Oh, it's better. It's better.
Oh, it is? Maybe it already
Rode.
picked it up. Maybe it.
With the Rode.
It's. Is it? It's not. It's not even pulling from the Rode.
Okay. Well, whatever you've got is working right now.
Okay. Well, if it's working, I'll keep going. Tell me if it changes, and we'll try to figure something else out. Oops. Okay. Sorry about that. We paused for technical difficulties. Okay.
You're still good. You're still good.
Okay. Good. All right.
Stick with whatever you got.
It was no wonder when she stood one day against the stone pillar in whose shadow she had lain asleep. So again, we have this foreshadowing because here she is back in the same shadow, right? 18 years before that Armand riding by and seeing her had fallen in love with her. So it's no wonder because she's so beautiful and so wonderful. And it says, the passion that awoke in him that day when he saw her at the gate swept along like an avalanche or like a prairie fire, or like anything that drives headlong over all obstacles. And my question for you is, tell me if the sound goes different, honey, because I took off this
That's
headphone.
good. That's great.
Okay. Tell me if that changes.
Oh, okay. You
All right.
switched. Good.
Yep. I have a question for you for the chat. Is it a good idea for love to be like an avalanche or prairie fire? What are some dangers in that kind of love? If you love someone like an avalanche or a prairie fire. So nice question about why it's told from Madame Valmonde's perspective and then switches. And that's an interesting narrative choice, right? So that's interesting. Oh, thank you guys. Thanks for your patience with the audio. You know, most people will be more patient with poor video than audio. So you guys are your own kind of rock star. Very nice. So curious about what's the danger in this kind. It's short. Okay. Nice. It will end quickly. Both things are dangerous and both come to an end. Nice. Nice. So we're going to come back to that. Another foreshadowing alert. The roof came down steep and black like a cowl. Here's where we see that cowl, like a hood, reaching out beyond the wide galleries that encircled the yellow stuccoed house. Big solemn oaks grew close to it, and their thick-leaved, far-reaching branches shouted it like a pall. So what we have here is this totally dark, very moody, very somber, very like gray and dark thing of the of the house that Armand and Desiree live in. That type of roof is called a mansard roof. And it looks like this. It's a French style of roof where the roof actually comes down and covers part of the house. So like this, only black, right? So imagine that like the roof comes down and shadows half the house in blackness. Now it says, and we get some more foreshadowing here, that his rule was strict. His Negroes had forgotten how to be gay. Now here we have two words, that one that we don't use anymore and one that we use in a completely different context. And so, but it's this sentence is telling us this guy is not as nice as his dad was. So it's like a clue. Ooh, a little hint. You know, people who are like nice 1 minute and then mean and horrible the next? Him. Okay. Another foreshadowing alert. Seriously, foreshadowing. This is what Madame Valmondé says when she sees the baby. This is not the baby, right? And Desiree takes it to mean, oh, it's because he's growing so fast. But that's a little foreshadowing. That is not what Madame Valmondé means, right? She lifted it and walked with it, which is interesting that now all of a sudden that she's noticed something different about the baby. The baby is now an it, right? Over to the light, right? And she scans the baby and then looks over at one of the slaves and then looks back at the baby, and the slave is like deliberately not looking at her, right? Because we know, everybody knows but them. And so this is what's beautiful, because we watch this tension build. If you've ever heard the phrase all knotted up, or if you've ever been nervous, you feel like your stomach's tied in knots, that's exactly what the author's doing to us, like tying us up in knots. It's like the tension is building like a knot. When the baby was about 3 months old, Desiree awoke one day to the conviction there was something in the air menacing her peace. Like, look at that verb, menacing. All right, then it was at first too subtle. A disquieting suggestion, an air of mystery, unexpected visits, right? Just like, why are you here, right? Then a strange, awful change in her husband's manner. When he spoke to her, it was with averted eyes. The love light's gone out, and we don't know what's going on. All we know is that it's getting worse and worse, and maybe it's something to do with this baby. Her husband isn't there. He avoids her presence, and the very spirit of Satan takes a hold of him, right? Desiree was miserable enough to die. And then the moment, the baby is asleep with like just a diaper, right? And one of LeBlanche's little quadroon boys, remember that means like 1/4 black. So here's what's going on. LeBlanche is half black, and this is one of her children. So one of her children, now because LeBlanche is a slave, her child is a slave, because that was the law, that if the mother was a slave, the child was a slave. So is fanning the baby, and Desiree's eyes had been fixed on her baby, and then she looks from her baby to LeBlanche's baby to her baby to LeBlanche's baby, and she's like, oh! And the blood turned like ice, and a clammy moisture gathered upon her face. This is amazing. Okay. Armand, right? She's freaking out. She's like, Armand, look at our child. What does it mean? So now we know that all along, this is what he's been mad about. Everybody figured this out before her. And then it means, and he says it lightly, right? It means that your child isn't white, right? It means you're not white. Like, he says this lightly, which is ironic because it's like her world is going to come crashing down. And he's talking about like that. And okay, so here's what's happened, right? Is that he has seen that she, like, I let myself get so far ahead. He's seen that the child is part black, and he has leapt to the conclusion that it means she's not white. And that's a reasonable assumption, right? Because we don't know where she came from. But it makes me think, if any of you are Lord of the Ring fans, it makes me think of that scene in Lord of the Rings where Galadriel, at the very beginning of the first movie, when Galadriel says, but they were all of them deceived. I just thought of that when I read this. Like, oh, but they were all of them deceived, right? Oh, it's so good. And she's like, but wait, look at me. I mean, I'm whiter than you. Look, I'm whiter than you. And then he says, yeah, you're as white as LeBlanche, who is half black, right? And then he walks away, and he turns. When it says he returned cruelly, it means he turns cruelly. He is so evil. I see it in the comments. Okay, but you know what? It's going to get worse, people. Okay, Armand the hypocrite. Because, okay, so here's a mature theme. Remember when Desiree says to her mom how loud the baby cries? Like, he's so healthy. She's saying it to say, like, he's so healthy that Armand could hear it at LeBlanche's house, right? Like, and LeBlanche is one of the slaves. So we are supposed to think to ourselves, wait a minute, what are you doing at LeBlanche's house? Like, why, what purpose could you possibly have of going there? And then to make the connection that when Desiree realizes the truth about her baby, it's when she sees the baby next to one of LeBlanche's children. And so what we don't even know is, does she recognize, like, what Desiree is noticing is not necessarily the color of the child, but the resemblance between the child and her child. And what Chopin is saying is that this guy is such a loser because this loser had a baby with a woman who wasn't his wife, which is very, very, very bad. You should not do that. That is bad. And now he's judging her because the baby is 1/4 black. I mean, you have got to be kidding me. This guy is such a loser. I hate this guy. All right. Remember this? Remember when he says, like, anything that drives headlong over obstacles? And I'm like, what about that, Armand? Your love was supposed to be like anything that could overcome obstacles. You liar, liar, pants on fire. Okay, so I had to stop here for our little moment of grammar, structure, writing pain and not pain, writing power, the appositive phrase. It's only painful because it's going to be about Armand. Okay, so appositive phrases. Appositive phrases are the perfect way to add just a little bit of snark to your writing. And I think if anybody deserves it, it's Armand. Okay, so what is an appositive phrase? An appositive phrase is a group of words that follow a noun. So it comes after a noun and they give more precise information about the noun. So noun and then appositive phrase. Many appositive phrases are made of an article and an adjective and a noun, but they can be constructed of lots of other different kinds of phrases and clauses, and you'll see some examples of that. And you always will set off an appositive phrase with commas, like that. Okay, so let's see some examples. Oh, first, why would you use one? You can highlight a trait, right? You can hone in on something. You can clarify who you're talking about. You can manipulate the reader, and you can give more information. So, here we go. Snow White, the girl with the 7 short roommates, swears by Febreze to keep that cottage smelling good. That highlighted part is the appositive phrase. It's telling more about Snow White, and it's giving us information that will make the rest of the sentence mean even more, right? Like if we know that she has 7 short dwarfish roommates, then we can see why she would need Febreze, right? Okay. Then the diver, the one sliding through the seaweed, nearly missed seeing the manta ray. So you see, it's giving more information about the diver, and it's kind of explaining why the diver might have missed the manta ray. And then Goldilocks, and I'm sorry, I know it's cutting off little bits of these words. I'm going to get better every day. Goldilocks, the picky little burglar, should have just gone to a hotel if she were tired and hungry. So see, I'm manipulating the reader. Okay, then Armand, a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad husband, probably has some good qualities. Okay, Elephant, I'm going to interrupt myself to say Elephant wants to know, can I explain about Armand? I'm confused. So Armand is, I'll come back to a positive phrase in just 1 second. Armand is judging her because he thinks that the fact that the baby is a quarter black, like looks like a quarter black, means that she's half black. He thinks he's white and she is half white and half black, and that nobody knew because she was found in front of the house. What is actually true, we'll find out what's actually true about him, but what is simultaneously true is that he's a hypocrite because he has had a bad relationship with one of his slaves that has resulted in children, and that he is a total hypocrite because he's saying like, he's already a hypocrite because he's like judging her for something she didn't even do, even if she were half black. And even if that were wrong, which it's not, obviously it's perfectly fine. But in his society, it was undesired, right? And so he's a hypocrite because he's actually done something wrong. She hasn't done anything wrong. but he has done something wrong, but he's judging her. Ah, he's a bad guy. All right. Here's another example. The sun, a yellow dwarf and a population 1 star that will probably live another 7 billion years, contains the metal from previous generations of stars that went supernova. And that's actually true. Okay, so it's giving more information about it. It's like even more information. Like here's a clue. Here's a cool thing about the sun. Okay, and then, so remember, this is why you'll use an appositive phrase to highlight a trait, to clarify who you're talking about, to manipulate the reader, or to give more information. Yeah, just wait. Some of you are saying, well, the story makes it sound like he's half black. Just wait. We haven't got there yet. Okay, so I want to see in the chat, give me an appositive phrase. The biker, appositive phrase, is headed west along the rough trail. So what's an appositive phrase that could go in here? And I think you're right, Madeline. Armand does have good qualities. He just doesn't always show them. In fact, he hardly ever shows them. But you're right. Nobody is all good or all bad. Okay, so let me see some appositive phrases here that will go in where you see that question mark. Jennifer, the sun is a dwarf. Yes, it is a yellow dwarf. Oh, I'm looking at somebody's math about the child. His child wouldn't be a quadrille. Ooh, good math. Good call on that. The one who figured out that a child of LeBlanche and Armand. But see, that brings up the point that the color isn't that clear. Okay, the biker, tired, sweaty, and hungry. Nice. Nice. The biker, a man of steel on a bike of steel. Ooh. The biker who had just stolen hand sanitizer. Okay, bonus. The biker who's a bald man. Okay, yeah, just giving more information. Ooh, trying to find the biker. Okay, you said trying to find his lost wife. That's actually what we did yesterday. That's actually a participial phrase. Nice. The biker wearing mouse ear. That's another appositive phrase. I'm sorry. That's another participial phrase. When we're looking at an appositive phrase, use this structure of an article, a, and, the. Okay, so very nice seeing those come in. Very nice seeing those come in. Okay, here's another one. Try this one. The scientist, appositive phrase, spends so much time at the lab, she doesn't mind sharing an apartment with 6 other scientists. So the scientist, a, and the. I'm loving some of these references to current events here. So some of you who are using like participial phrases could shift those to an appositive phrase by saying, the biker, an adventurer headed to the wild, wild west, right? Because some of you have got some other kinds of phrases in here. Try starting with a, an, or the. The biker, the one with the shock blonde hair and ghost blue eyes. Nice. The scientist, the one destined to get a Nobel Prize. The scientist, the one with 7 PhDs. The scientist, the one who discovered, the one who discovered coronavirus. Or the scientist, an introvert. Oh, not an idiot. Okay, so I'm liking seeing some of those come in. I love to see your examples on these. I go back and read them all. So nice job, people. Okay, so then back to the plot. Desiree gets this letter from her mom because she writes her mom and is like, what should I do? What should I do? And her mom says, come back. And she takes the letter to Armand and they have this loving exchange. In silence, he ran his cold eyes over the written words. He said, nothing. Shall I go? Right? She's in agony. Yes, go. Do you want me to go? Yes, I want you to go. Like she gives him 2 chances. Are you sure you want me to go? Are you sure you want me to go? I want you to go. And so, I don't know. At this point, I just want to vote Armand off the island right here. I just do. I know it's easy for me to throw shade on him, but look at this. Look at this. This is what he says. He thought that God had dwelt cruelly and unjustly with him. and felt that he was paying God back by being mean to Desiree. Like, he's mad at God, and so he's going to be mean to Desiree as a way to get back at God. And it's just like, and he even recognizes in this because of the unconscious injury. Like, even if he were right, he recognizes that it's nothing that she did intentionally. And it's just so, could you be more shallow and self-centered? Hashtag, I don't think so. All right. Then what I think is powerful about this story is that it seems to be human nature to jump to this kind of conclusion. I think it's human nature to act like Armand. I think that one of the things that Chopin is trying to tell us is we're all a lot more like Armand than we wish we were. A lot of us jump to conclusions. A lot of us judge each other harshly. A lot of people are willing to give either themselves or people who they know or people who think like them a pass if they say something stupid or thoughtless. But if it's somebody who you don't like or somebody you disagree with, then you don't give them that pass. So I think there's just so much hypocrisy in the way that a lot of us act. And I think Chopin is really highlighting that in this story. Like, I think she's tricked us a little bit into hating Armand so much that we're really judgmental of him without recognizing that's us too, right? And then this is how she reacts. She did not take the broad beaten road. She disappeared among the reeds and she did not come back again. Dun, 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 dun. This is the saddest moment. And I wonder, though, if because I'm already so caught up in judging Armand as a racist, hypocrite, unfeeling jerk of a husband, I wonder if I should judge Desiree too, because she's kind of weak here. I mean, I think you could argue she is. She's completely given up. I mean, she's given up as much as somebody can give up. And she just walks away. And she makes it so there's no fixing this. And she actually impacts the child even in a way that Armand doesn't. So I think in a way, Chopin is using this overarching theme of racism that we can all relate to, we all know about, we all don't like. And she's using it to make us take stronger looks at how people respond to things. So I'm curious about what ways you think Desiree could be considered as weak. So if you want to add that. Where does she go? The implication is that she kills herself and the baby, that they just walk off and just, die of exposure or starvation or something. I mean, it's terrible. She died. It's terrible. I mean, I get what some of you are saying, like she's broken. I get it, right? Her heart is broken. I'm just curious. Do you think, is that a sign? Like, is she weak? Is she not weak? Like, is there an excuse for her behavior? Interesting. But then there's a plot twist. Yes, Emma is completely right. It seems like the end. Desiree walks off. It seems like the end. But wait, there's more. Because, dun 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 dun, the big ironic ending. And that is where there's this incredible ending scene. Armand is burning everything related to Desiree, right? Baby clothes, her clothes, everything that was in the corbeille. The corbeille comes back right here. Everything. Remember, part of the corbeille's purpose was to turn her into the wife he wanted. All burning. And then he finds this partial letter from his own mother, who, remember, was French, and she and her and his father had lived in France and were married there, but then she died there before he moved back to Louisiana. And the letter says, "Night and day, I thank the good God for having so arranged our lives that our dear Armand will never know that I am black." Now, we don't know how much, right? And so that goes back to the math. It's possible that Armand himself is less, right? Because she's not, this is the fallacy, right? That the idea that somebody is like half this and half that, because there's so much intermarriage, even a really long time ago. And if you have your DNA tested, you'll realize, right? You'll realize how silly it is to judge people based on their nationality. I cannot wait to go back and read some more of these comments about your analysis of Desiree. So be ready to see some of those on Monday in class, because I can see some really nice analysis. Okay, so this moment is like this big volcanic eruption. You're watching it, you're reading this, it's just like, are you serious right now? Like, wait a minute. It's not her, it's him. I mean, it's like, ah! And this is the best kind of irony where something has been done that can't be undone. Like, you can't go get Desiree back. You can't undo it. He can't go, oh, I'm so sorry, my bad. He can't do it because she's gone. She's gone and it's over. And now I want to know, I want to vote. I tried to figure out how to do a poll and I just couldn't quite master it because this is what I want to know. Do you think he burns that letter? Like he's burning all the other letters. Does he burn that letter from his mom? Does he burn it? Canary says something important, that France was much more accepting of mixed race marriage than the South in the United States would have been at that time. That's absolutely true. Okay, so did he burn the last letter? Inquiring minds want to know. What do you think? Do you think he did? We don't know. It doesn't say, so it's just a vote. All right, and then I'm curious, on foreshadowing, usually you don't really notice the foreshadowing the first time you're going through. Like when we read the necklace, the first time I read it, and she went to the jeweler, and the jeweler's like, that's my box, but that's not my necklace. I was like, But usually foreshadowing doesn't completely reveal itself until later. And I'm curious about, did you notice more foreshadowing as we've gone through it again? And if you did, I want you to take that as a clue that you should read stories twice, because then you'll be able to read them and go, oh, right? Okay. Oh, I'm trying not to distract myself with all your votes about whether you burn the letter. All right. So our theme of justice in this story, we have this macro injustice of slavery and racism overarching the whole story, right? Part of what Chopin's message here is slavery and racism are ridiculous. And what's powerful about this is that her family owned slaves. So she grew up in a slave-holding family and household, but she's saying, this is stupid. This is ridiculous. This is wrong. But then we have this micro injustice of the personal rejection of Desiree by Armand. And I'm curious about whether you think Armand gets any kind of pass. Like, does he get a pass on being a racist jerk because of being a product of the time period? Like, for either kind. Like, the way that he treats her differently, has different expectations of her as a woman than he does of himself as a man, and as his racism. Like, is it fair? Is it fair for us to judge people who lived a long time ago based on the way that we think now? And consider that if you think it is, does that mean it's fair for people 100 or 200 years from now to judge you based on things that you think and believe according to how they do in the future? So kind of interesting. All right, we're going to go to our writing rock stars here. So I can tell the people who are staying for this part because your writing shows it. All right, so up through 8th grade, sample 1. I will say I'm getting way more samples in that grade level, so I have more examples from them. I liked this idea of starting with a question, and a number of you did it. It invites the reader to think like you, to connect with you, and I love this verb here of extract. Very nice. This 7th grader did a nice job with this opening. And then look at this. This blew me away. Just a shout out for voluntary parenthetical citation. Wasn't expecting that. Opened it up and was like, whoa, right? And also notice how the writer here explains the significance of the quote, gives us that quote from the story, and then tells us why it's important. You've got to say why you're putting this quote in. Just putting in a bunch of quotes from the story is not helpful. You've got to say why, right? Why? All right, next sample. I liked this one. I want to point out this interesting topic sentence. That look at these reasons. He's out of control and he's not respectful. He's disrespectful. He doesn't have enough respect. What I like about this is that the lack of respect that this person argues about and makes a good job in their writing piece was exactly the crime that Montresor was mad with Fortunato about. And now the person is saying he's mad because Fortunato showed him very little respect, but he's disrespectful. So I thought that was interesting. Next, this is a nice little simile here, and it was a play on the characters' words or characters' names as well. So I wanted to show that, right? It would be like trading a penny for a fortune. So that was kind of nice. An insult doesn't marry death, and so that was clever. I thought that was cleverly done. I see what you did there. And then this one, I want to show this example, and I'm going to show the whole thing because it was picture perfect. It maintained its strength through the entire response, and I want you to see why it's so good. Now, those of you who are still reading, this isn't applying to you. But some people are writing like 2 sentences, and I can't really do anything with that, and neither can you. So I want you to see this full response. Okay, starting with a question, again, strong. Have you ever been hurt so badly by a friend that you would have done anything to get back at them? So that's a nice way to start. Now notice this person asks this question and then jumps right into the argument. Doesn't ask the question in 14 different ways, right? That is how the antagonist Montresor feels in the short story, The Cask of Amontillado. So right away, like invite me to feel like you do and then explain this is how the character felt. Now, but Montresor takes it a step further than just an angry word. He's willing to commit murder. Many may argue that his act of vengeance is fair, but I would have to disagree with him. Now, again, you can take out the I would disagree because I know it's you because you're writing, but notice this strength of this. Disagree. So I asked you, was it fair or unfair? You got to tell me, do you agree or disagree? And then the writer goes on to say, this is a 7th grader. I think 7th or 8th grader. I mean, this is amazing. So even though his frenemy Fortunato had hurt him dearly and deeply, beautiful alliteration there, he doesn't have any right to murder, right? A mere insult is no cause, even though and there's some pronoun confusion here. I think we probably would have been better off saying Fortunato, even though Fortunato may have had evil intentions. The short story also gives no cause for the reader to think that Montresor had tried to talk to him, right? Like saying the narrator left this out. Like we don't even know if he tried to get an apology, right? It's possible that this would have happened. And then in conclusion, Montresor's crime was not fair nor justified in any way. Again, you can leave out the I believe, but that strength of the argument. I just wanted you to see an entire example that the whole thing was strong. All right, next. All the Montresor, so that should have been all that Montresor had. I couldn't resist including this. This is a 5th grader. Had on his mind was getting revenge, and he got that, but yet he didn't feel any satisfaction. And I thought that was so impressive that a 5th grader pulled out that idea. And what this person couldn't know, what this 5th grader probably does not know, is that the term satisfaction has an interesting meaning here because it's the term that we use when someone challenges someone to a duel. They will say, I demand satisfaction. And so the fact that satisfaction was the word choice here is even more powerful. All right. So next example is, since Montresor felt his revenge was fair, his revenge inflicted the same level of pain on Fortunato that Fortunato inflicted on him. So his revenge was fair. So this person says, I'm going to set aside the whole moral argument about what the action was, and I'm going to focus on were their feelings even. And I think this is an 8th grader, and I think this concluding statement is particularly strong. This is a particularly strong statement. All right, so 9th and 10th graders, fewer examples now. So just because there are fewer ones. So for Montresor to still even remember Fortunato's name after 50 years is proof that his day of revenge has left a clear impression on and been thought of often by Montresor. So like, you didn't get away with it, dude, because you're still thinking about it. So nice. And to say you even remember his name 50 years later says you're not over this. So that was a nice way to prove that he didn't really meet his rules. So here we go. Was he successful or not? And this example does something that I think is really important. You show an example and then you say what it does. Look at this opening. The author says, this is what I'm going to prove, and then does prove it. He was successful because he followed his own standards and let them fall into place through deception. So showing even the methodology, so nice, through the use of deception. And he says, like, he tricked his servants, right? So I'm going to tell you, I wish everybody would read this one because I want you to see, I'm going to tell you in the opening sentence, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to prove. And then I'm actually going to do that. Like, blah, love it. Okay. Next. Therefore, since Montresor felt his revenge was fair, that his revenge inflicted... Oh, I think I used that one twice. Sorry. Okay, next sample. However, Montresor. Some of them I ended up grading twice. I don't know what, not grading, but looking at twice. I don't know. Something was glitchy, I guess. Okay, so yes, use textual evidence. That would be really nice. But notice this. This soul glimpse is all the reader needs. So even though we only got this little short glimpse at the end, it's all the reader needs. And I think that's an important argument to make. So well done. Okay, 11th grade, sample 1. The short story, The Cask of Amontillado, describes a plotted revenge. Nice. It's an important point that he plotted this out, right? And again, this is exactly what they're looking for. Tell me what you're going to prove and then prove it. Montresor has borne, and I just had to show this. This, like, you should literally go back and take a screenshot of this because this is perfect embedding of a quote. And the way, you notice that use of brackets, is to show me that the writer has changed a word, but the meaning is still the same, right? And so, or it's like to clarify something. So this is beautiful. This is perfect. I was really, really, really impressed with that and wish that all my students could do that. Now here, this is a must-have shout out. This is a 5th grader. And I just want you to see, I'm going back to 5th grade because I want you to see how this 5th grader captured the mood of the piece. And there's another line later on, I'll say, okay, imagine being chained to a damp, leaking wall for all eternity. Now notice, they're capturing a mood using evidence from the text. Okay, imagine being sealed in with a wall made of stones by a friend. And imagine the bones, the thick, rotting carcasses of the long deceased. All is dark, and it always will be. When I read this, I was like, this is like a 5th grade Poe. You are amazing. I love how the writer captured the tone of the story in the response. I love Chelsea. He was a leech of despair. Yes, okay. I mean, capturing the mood of the story in the response, that's meta. And I was just super impressed with this. Okay, so let's write. Here are the writing prompts for today. And in a moment of sheer genius, I actually have all the right ones today. All right. And again, I'll put them up in the folder in just a couple minutes after. Okay. In about 100 words, persuade someone. This is if you're through 8th grade. Persuade someone why the person should read this story more than once. So Desiree's Baby, argue that you should read it more than once, right? Okay, and then if you are in 9th or 10th grade, compare the endings of The Necklace and Desiree's Baby and find 2 points of similarity and 1 point of difference. We know that Chopin was trying to mimic Maupassant. Did she succeed? So show 2 ways that the stories are similar and 1 that they're different. And then if you are in, there's nothing cut off in this prompt for 11th or 12th grade. If you are in 11th or 12th grade, compare the obvious flaws of Armand. Right. Chopin makes his flaws very, very obvious. Compare the obvious flaws of Armand to the less obvious flaws of Desiree. And in the end, make the argument whose flaws are most damaging. All right. I cannot wait to see what you have to say about this. When you are ready to, okay, you'll be able to find these prompts again in the folder for Desiree's Baby and put your writing in the uploads. If you're concerned about other people reading your writing, you can change your settings on that. I'll still be able to see it because I own the folder. And then the story for Monday, very, very different story. Very different story. This is the like technically lowest level story that we're going to read in the sense of like the easiest read. But there's a lot going on. And in the folder for that story, in the muffin folder, I'm going to put a document with some links to some stuff that I think might give you some insight into what's going on here. But I cannot wait to hear what you guys have to say about Desiree's Baby. So I'll be looking forward to reading that over the weekend as well as getting ready for next week. And I will see you Monday, same bat time, same bat channel. You guys have a great weekend. It was awesome to be with you today.